The massive meeting hall on planet Centauri Prime buzzed with nervous energy. 47 different alien species had gathered for what many believed would be the most important vote in galactic history. The air shimmered with different atmospheric bubbles, each one keeping its occupant alive in the foreign environment. Ambassador Vextai stood at the center podium, his four purple arms moving in dramatic gestures as he spoke. His species, the hegemony, had been the dominant force in galactic politics for over 3,000 years. Today, he was about to make a speech that would change everything. Fellow council members, Vextai began, his voice carried through translation devices to every corner of the hall. We have been patient, we have been generous, we have given the humans every opportunity to prove they belong among civilized species. In the floating crystal pods above, the Zephyrians chimed their agreement with sounds like wind through metal tubes. Below in their water-filled tanks, the Deepers bubbled approval through their gills. The insect-like hive collective clicked their mandibles in unison. But they have failed us, Vextai continued. In the single year since we granted them observer status, the humans have broken 17 trade agreements. They have ignored 23 diplomatic protocols. They have somehow convinced 3 peaceful worlds to abandon their traditional governments for something they call democracy. The word democracy was spoken like a curse. In the Galactic Council, decisions were made by the oldest and wisest members of each species. The idea that common citizens could choose their own leaders was seen as dangerous chaos. Worse still, Vextai's voice rose, they refused to accept proper classification. Every species in the galaxy fits into clear categories. We are either predators or prey, carnivores or herbivores, logical or emotional. The humans claim to be all of these things at once. This is clearly impossible and indicates severe mental instability. On Earth, 12,000 light-years away, Admiral Kate Morrison watched the live broadcast from her office in the Pentagon. The translation came through her neural implant in perfect English, though she could hear the aliens' actual words underneath like a strange musical accompaniment. Beside her, General Rick Coleman shook his head in disgust. They're actually doing it. After all the warnings, all the diplomatic meetings, they're really going to declare war. Did you expect anything different? Asked Dr. Lisa Park from her seat near the window. As Earth's chief xenobiologist, she had spent the last year studying every alien species humanity had encountered. Look at their history. Every time they meet a species that doesn't fit their neat little categories, they either force them to comply or destroy them. Admiral Morrison remained silent, her green eyes fixed on the screen. She had gray hair despite being only 45. Years old, a casualty of the stress that came with being Earth's first military commander to deal with alien contact. Her face showed no emotion as she watched the proceedings. On Centauri Prime, other council members began to speak. The crystalline Zephyrians sang their concerns about human unpredictability. The aquatic Deepers worried about human expansion into ocean worlds. The plant-like Verdani expressed fear that humans would strip their worlds of resources. Each complaint followed the same pattern. Humans were too adaptable, too curious, too willing to change. They didn't follow the established order that had kept the galaxy peaceful for millennia. The humans claimed their world shaped them, declared Senator Yathara of the Crystal Collective. Her voice rang like bells through the chamber. They say their planet was dangerous, that it forced them to become adaptable. But this is exactly why they cannot be trusted. A species that changes constantly cannot be predicted or controlled. Admiral Morrison's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Controlled, she repeated quietly. There's the real issue. Dr. Park nodded. They're not afraid of us because we're aggressive. They're afraid because we don't fit into their system. Every other species they've encountered follows predictable patterns. We don't. The debate continued for hours. Species after species rose to list human crimes against galactic order. They spoke of human merchants who refused to honor traditional pricing structures. They complained about human diplomats who asked too many questions. They were horrified by human scientists who wanted to study everything they encountered. But the final insult, Vextai announced as the debate reached its climax, came 3 days ago when the humans submitted their official response to our classification requirements. The hall fell silent. Every being present knew what he was referring to. The Galactic Council had demanded that humanity choose a single classification for their species. Were they predators or prey, logical or emotional, individual or collective? Their response, Vextai said, his forearms spreading wide, was a single word: no. The reaction was immediate. Angry chittering, bubbling, chiming, and buzzing filled the hall. To reject classification was to reject the very foundation of galactic civilization on Earth. General Coleman laughed despite the seriousness of the situation. You have to admit it was a good answer. Short and to the point, agreed Dr. Park. Though I suspect they didn't appreciate our reasoning. The reasoning had been simple enough. Humans were the product of a world that had tried to kill them in every possible way for millions of years. They had survived ice ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, plague, famine, predators, and countless natural disasters to survive. They had learned to be whatever they needed to be in any given situation. They could be patient hunters when tracking prey, or fierce pack animals when defending their young. They could be coldly logical when solving problems, or passionately emotional when protecting what they loved. They could work together in perfect harmony, or compete ruthlessly for resources. The aliens wanted to put humanity in a box, but humans had long ago learned that boxes were often tombs. The vote, when it finally came, was unanimous among the council species. War would be declared within 7 standard days, giving humanity time to surrender and accept classification as a Class D. Servitor Species. Admiral Morrison stood as the final votes were tallied. She straightened her uniform and activated the quantum communicator that would connect her directly to the council chamber. The hall on Centauri Prime fell silent as her image appeared on screens throughout the massive space. Here was the leader of the species that had defied them, the woman who would either surrender her people or lead them to destruction. Morrison looked directly into the camera, her expression calm and professional. This is Admiral Kate Morrison. Speaking for the people of Earth and all human colonies, we have received your declaration of war and your demands for surrender. She paused, letting the moment stretch. 47 species held their breath, waiting for her response. Message received and understood, she said simply. Is that all? The simplicity of the response sent confused chittering through the alien assembly. They had expected pleas for mercy, offers of tribute, desperate negotiations, or at least angry defiance. Instead, they got polite acknowledgement and what sounded almost like boredom. Ambassador Vextai recovered first. We require your surrender within 7 standard days, he repeated, speaking slowly as if addressing a child. You will accept classification as a servitor species and submit to council authority. Morrison nodded as if he had just told her the weather forecast. We heard you the first time, Ambassador. 7 days it is. And your response? Vextai pressed, clearly frustrated by her calm demeanor. Morrison's smile was small but genuine. We'll get back to you on that. The transmission ended, leaving the council members staring at blank screens. In the silence that followed, more than one alien wondered if they had missed something important. On Earth, Admiral Morrison turned off the communicator and looked at her colleagues. Well, that's done. Rick, how are our preparations coming? General Coleman consulted his tablet. All assets are in position. Dr. Park's analysis was right on target about their psychology. They're so confident in their superiority that they're not even trying to hide their fleet movements. Good, Morrison said, settling back into her chair. Let's show them what Earth's children can really do. Outside the Pentagon windows, the sun was setting over Washington, D.C. in 7 days. It would either rise on a free Earth or on the newest member of the Galactic Council's servant species. The humans, however, had their own ideas about which it would be. 7 days seemed like a very short time to prepare for war against the entire galaxy. That was what most people would think. But the humans had not been sitting idle since first contact with the Galactic Council over a year ago, deep beneath the surface of Luna Earth's moon. Colonel Amy Torres walked through corridors that officially did not exist. The facility had been carved out of solid rock and shielded against every type of scanning technology the humans had encountered. Even their own people did not know about most of what happened here. "Status report," Torres said as she entered the main command center. The room was filled with dozens of workstations, each one monitoring different aspects of what the military called Operation Cerberus. The name came from an old Earth myth about a three-headed dog that guarded the gates of hell. Lieutenant Ben Hayes looked up from his console. His young face was tired from weeks of 18-hour days, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "All stealth platforms are in position throughout Council space. The target fleet is maintaining standard formation. They're not even trying to hide their approach," Torres nodded. The Council's combined fleet was massive, over 3,000 ships from dozens of different worlds. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built. But size was not everything, as the aliens were about to learn. "What about the Trojan horses?" Torres asked. "All active and ready," Hayes replied. "Every Council ship in the fleet is carrying at least one of our packages. Most have 3 or 4. The Trojan horses were humanity's greatest secret weapon, and the Council had delivered them personally. Over the past year, human diplomats had presented gifts to their alien counterparts. Cultural exchange items, communication devices, data storage units, even decorative art pieces. All of them contained hidden human technology. The aliens had been so confident in their own superiority that they never seriously scanned the gifts. They saw humans as primitive creatures who could barely manage faster-than-light travel. The idea that human technology could be a threat never occurred to them. On Earth, General Rick Coleman stood in the Pentagon's main briefing room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every known Council ship. The enemy fleet was still 4 days away from Earth, moving in a formation that looked more like a parade than a military advance. "They're not even trying to hide," noted Commander Paul Wright, Earth's head of naval intelligence. Wright was a thin man with sharp eyes who had spent his career studying alien military tactics. "Their formation is a standard peacekeeping deployment. They expect us to surrender before they even arrive." Coleman smiled grimly. "That's exactly what we wanted them to think." In another part of the Pentagon, Dr. Lisa Park was conducting her final briefing for Earth's top military leaders. The xenobiologist had spent the last year studying every piece of information about the Council species, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. "The key thing to understand," Dr. Park said as she gestured to a holographic display, "is that every species in the Council evolved under very different conditions than we did. Their worlds were stable, predictable places where survival strategies could be planned generations in advance." The display showed various alien homeworlds. Centauri Prime, where the Council met, was a planet of endless calm seas and gentle weather. The Zephyrian crystal cities were built on a world where the biggest natural disaster might be a minor earthquake every few centuries. The deeper homeworld was a peaceful ocean with no major storms or dangerous currents. "They're specialists," Dr. Park continued. "Each species developed 1 or 2 survival strategies and perfected them over millions of years. They became very good at doing specific things, but they never learned to adapt quickly to changing conditions." "And we did," Admiral Morrison said from her seat at the head of the table. "It was not a question. We had to," Dr. Park replied. "Earth tried to kill us every single day for 4 million years. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Supervolcanoes that blocked out the sun. Asteroid impacts that wiped out entire ecosystems. Diseases that killed 90% of the population. We didn't just survive by being tough. We survived by learning to change." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council species had evolved to be perfect at specific tasks. Humans had evolved to be adequate at everything and excellent at adaptation. "That's why they can't classify us," Dr. Park said. "We're not one thing. We're whatever we need to be at any given moment. Far from Earth, in the depths of space, Captain." Jake Sullivan commanded the reconnaissance vessel Horizon's Edge. His ship had been shadowing the Council fleet for weeks, using stealth technology that the aliens could not detect. The ship's hull was covered in a metamaterial that bent light around it, making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. "Captain," called Ensign Claire Watson from the sensor station, "the Council fleet is beginning to accelerate. They'll reach Earth in 4 days instead of 5. Sullivan nodded and activated his ship's quantum communicator. The message would reach Earth instantly, traveling through subspace in a way that the Council's own communication systems could not intercept. "Control, this is Horizon's Edge. The enemy is eager to get started. Dance begins in 4 days. Back on Luna, Colonel Torres received the message and smiled. 4 days was still plenty of time. The pieces had been in place for months. "Hayes, activate the sleeper protocols," she ordered. "Yes, ma'am," the lieutenant replied, his fingers flying over his console. "Sleeper protocols are now active." "Oh." "Assets are responding." Throughout Council space, on dozens of worlds and hundreds of space stations, human agents received the activation signal. These were not soldiers or spies in the traditional sense. They were merchants, scientists, cultural exchange students, and tourists. People who had been living and working in alien territory for months, learning everything they could about Council technology and society. The Council had welcomed them with open arms. After all, what threat could primitive humans pose to advanced galactic civilization? On the mining world of Kepler 442b, human geologist Dr. Sam Turner was examining alien excavation equipment when his neural implant chimed softly. The signal was brief and coded, but the message was clear. It was time to move. Turner looked around the mining facility where he had been working for 6 months. The alien supervisors had been kind to him, treating him like a curious but harmless primitive. They had shown him all their technology, explained their mining techniques, and even given him access to their computer systems. After all, what could one human do with such information? They were about to find out. On the trade station orbiting Vega, human merchant Susan Lee received the same signal. She had been running a small shop that sold earthcrafts and foods too. Curious aliens. Her customers loved the exotic items from the primitive human world. They had no idea that every item she sold contained microscopic sensors that had been mapping the station's internal structure for months. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. In research facilities and military bases, on cargo ships and passenger liners, human agents began to implement plans that had been months in the making. The Council species had made one critical error. They had assumed that because humans were new to galactic civilization, they were also naive about it. But humans had been studying warfare and espionage for thousands of years. They knew how to gather intelligence, how to position assets, and how to strike when the moment was right. "All teams report ready," Lieutenant Hayes announced. "We have assets in position throughout their territory. When the fleet arrives at Earth, we'll be ready for them." Admiral Morrison watched the tactical displays from her command center. The Council fleet was approaching in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had 3,000 ships against humanity's few hundred. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could deflect stellar radiation. They had the combined military might of 47 worlds. What they did not have was experience fighting an enemy that refused to play by the established rules. "General Coleman," Morrison said into her communicator, "are our people ready?" "As ready as they can be," Coleman replied from his own command post. "The aliens are about to learn that there's a difference between being primitive and being underestimated." Dr. Park's voice came through the CUM system from her laboratory. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the approaching fleet. They're powering up their weapons. They really intend to attack if we don't surrender." "Then we'd better make sure they don't get the chance," Morrison replied calmly. The Council fleet continued its approach, its commanders confident that the humans would see reason and surrender. After all, what choice did they have? The galaxy's greatest military force was bearing down on them, and resistance was clearly futile. But as the fleet drew closer to Earth, other ships began to move as well. Hidden throughout the solar system, disguised as asteroids, debris, and space junk, the human fleet began to take positions. These were not the crude vessels that the Council expected. They were products of a year of intensive study of alien technology, combined with human ingenuity and desperation. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Council Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm of metal and light. 3,000 ships of every shape and size filled the void, their hulls gleaming with the combined might of 47 worlds. At the center of the formation, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion served as the flagship for the entire operation. Admiral Kethver stood on the ship's bridge, his 6 eyes scanning the tactical displays with satisfaction. The hegemony commander had led successful campaigns against dozens of rebellious worlds over his long career. This operation against the humans would be no different. "Status report," Kethver ordered, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of military service. "All ships report ready for combat," replied his tactical officer, a younger member of his species whose purple skin still bore the bright patterns of youth. Long-range sensors detect approximately 200 human vessels moving to intercept. Most appear to be converted civilian craft with basic weapon systems. Kethver's mandibles clicked in amusement. 200 ships against 3,000. The humans were either incredibly brave or completely insane. Either way, the result would be the same. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. "Let us give them one final chance to surrender before we are forced to destroy them." What Admiral Kethver could not see were the thousands of objects drifting silently throughout the solar system. They looked like asteroids, space debris, and abandoned satellites. Some had been there for months, others for weeks. All of them were human military assets, powered down and virtually invisible to the Council's sensors on Luna Base. Colonel Amy Torres watched the enemy fleets approach with grim satisfaction. Every ship in the Council Armada was exactly where her intelligence had predicted it would be. More importantly, every ship was carrying human technology that had been disguised as gifts and trade goods over the past year. "All units, this is Control," Torres transmitted on the encrypted human frequency. "Operation Cerberus is now active. Show them what Earth's children can do when they stop playing nice." The first sign that something was wrong came at exactly 14 to 32 ship time aboard the Eternal Dominion. The massive dreadnought's lights flickered once, then died completely. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the bridge in red light as alarms began to sound throughout the ship. "What happened?" Admiral Kethver demanded, his calm confidence evaporating as his officers scrambled at their stations. "Unknown, sir," the tactical officer replied, his voice tight with panic. "All primary systems are offline. Weapons, shields, propulsion, everything just stopped working." Similar scenes were playing out across the Council fleet. Ship after ship went dark as their primary systems failed without warning. The massive armada that entered the solar system with such confidence was now drifting helplessly in space. The source of their problems was small and seemingly innocent. Every Council ship carried dozens of human-made devices that had been presented as gifts during diplomatic exchanges. Communication enhancers, data storage units, cultural artifacts, even decorative items. The aliens had accepted them gratefully, never suspecting that each device contained sophisticated human technology. For months, these hidden systems had been quietly studying their host ships. They learned the alien computer languages, mapped the internal systems, and identified critical vulnerabilities. When the activation signal came, they struck with surgical precision. Captain Jake Sullivan's reconnaissance ship Horizon's Edge decloaked directly above the flagship, its stealth systems deactivating to reveal the sleek human vessel. Sullivan activated his communicator and broadcast on all Council frequencies. "Admiral Kethver, This is Captain Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. You and your fleet are ordered to stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded. On the flagship's bridge, chaos reigned as officers tried desperately to restore power while security teams searched for saboteurs that seemed to exist only as ghosts. Admiral Kethver stared at the human ship hovering above his disabled dreadnought, his mind struggling to understand what had happened. "How did you penetrate our shields?" he demanded over the open channel. Sullivan's response was broadcast to every ship in the Council fleet. "We didn't need to penetrate your shields, Admiral. We've been inside your ship since before you left." Home. The truth was even more disturbing than Kethver could imagine. Every piece of human technology aboard Council ships had been designed for this moment. What the aliens thought were simple communication devices were actually sophisticated infiltration tools that had spent months learning how to disable their host systems. Lieutenant Ben Hayes, monitoring the operation from Luna Base, watched his displays with professional satisfaction. All targets are showing complete system failures. No hostile action detected from any Council vessel. Casualties? Colonel Torres asked. None reported. The shutdown protocols specifically avoided life support and medical systems. Everyone should be fine, just very confused. That had been the point. Humanity could have designed weapons to kill everyone aboard the Council ships, but that would have made them into the aggressors. Instead, they had chosen to demonstrate their capabilities without causing unnecessary harm. Across the Council fleet, boarding parties began to materialize inside disabled ships. These were not the crude boarding actions that the aliens expected. Human soldiers appeared in corridors and compartments throughout their vessels, moving with the confidence of people who knew exactly where they were going. The boarders had spent months studying the internal layouts of every ship type in the Council fleet. They knew where the security stations were located, which passages led to critical systems, and how to move through the ships without being detected. Most importantly, they knew how to disable any remaining resistance without causing permanent harm. On the Zephyrian crystal ship Harmony of Ages, Commander Zithara watched in amazement as human soldiers appeared in her command center as if materializing from thin air. The humans moved with calm efficiency, securing the bridge and checking on the welfare of her crew. "Please remain calm," said the human team leader, a woman with sergeant's stripes on her uniform. "You are not in danger. We are here to ensure your safety while this situation is resolved." "How did you get aboard our ship?" Zithara asked, her crystalline voice chiming with confusion. "Trade delegation from 6 months ago," the sergeant replied matter-of-factly. "Your hospitality was excellent, by the way. We learned a great deal about your people and your technology." Similar conversations were taking place throughout the Council fleet. Human boarding parties were polite, professional, and completely in control of the situation. They treated their prisoners well, provided medical assistance where needed, and went out of their way to avoid causing panic. The most shocking realization for the Council commanders was not that they had been defeated, but how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered. The humans had not won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had won through patience, planning, and a complete understanding of their enemy. Dr. Lisa Park's voice came through the communication system from her laboratory on Earth. "All boarding parties, this is Control. Remember that our guests are likely experiencing significant psychological shock. Their entire understanding of military superiority has just been challenged. Be patient with them." Admiral Kethver found himself face to face with Captain Sullivan, who had transported directly to the flagship's bridge. The human officer was younger than the alien admiral had expected, with calm eyes and a confident manner that spoke of extensive combat experience. "I don't understand," Kethver said, his 6 eyes staring at the human captain. "Your species has been in space for less than a century. How could you possibly have developed such capabilities?" Sullivan's smile was neither cruel nor mocking, just tired. "Admiral, you've been studying us for a year, but you never really understood what you were looking at. You saw primitive technology and assumed we were primitive people. You saw peaceful intentions and assumed we were helpless." The human captain gestured toward the view screen, which now showed the disabled Council fleet floating helplessly in space. What you fail to understand is that we've been preparing for this possibility since the day we learned we weren't alone in the universe. Every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange, every trade agreement was also an intelligence gathering operation. But your ships, Kethver protested, your weapons. Everything we observed indicated you were centuries behind our technology. And we were, Sullivan agreed. But we're very fast learners, especially when our survival depends on it. Every piece of technology you shared with us, every tour you gave us of your facilities, every time you explained how something worked, we were taking notes. The implications were staggering. The Council had been so confident in their superiority that they had never considered the possibility that the humans were studying them as intensively as they were studying the humans, Lieutenant. Hayes' voice crackled through Sullivan's communicator. Captain, we have complete control of all enemy vessels. Total time from initiation to completion, 6 hours, 14 minutes. No casualties on either side. Sullivan nodded and turned back to Admiral Kethver. The news of the fleet's complete capture spread through the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in over 1,000 years, a Galactic Council military operation had not just failed, but failed so completely that it seemed impossible to believe. On the crystal world of Zeph Prime, the ruling council of the Zephyrian Collective met in emergency session. Their crystalline forms chimed with agitation as they tried to understand what had happened to their mighty fleet. This cannot be accurate, declared Prime Resonance Kylter, the eldest of their kind. No species develops such capabilities after only 1 year of contact with galactic civilization. The data streams are clear, replied Information Keeper. Vexilin, her younger crystal form flickering with transmitted data. Every ship in the combined fleet has been captured intact. Not one vessel was destroyed. Not one crew member was harmed. The humans simply took control of everything. The implications were staggering. If the humans could disable the galaxy's most powerful fleet without firing a shot, what else were they capable of? On the aquatic world of Deepholm, the underwater, cities buzzed with similar panic. The Deepers had contributed their fastest ships to the fleet, vessels designed to move through space as gracefully as they moved through water. Now those ships were floating helplessly in an alien solar system. How could this happen? Bubbled Elder Silrath through the water that filled the council chamber. Our intelligence indicated the humans were primitive, single-planet species with barely functional space travel. Our intelligence was wrong, replied Scout Commander Villandra, her gills fluttering with agitation. The humans have been studying us since first contact. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange was gathering information about our capabilities. The truth was becoming clear across the galaxy. Humanity had not been stumbling through their first year of galactic contact. They had been conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in recorded history. On Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison found herself dealing with a flood of communications from panicking council members. Every few minutes, another desperate message arrived from a different world. Some demanded explanations. Others threatened terrible revenge. A few even offered tribute in exchange for the return of their fleets. Admiral, General Rick Coleman said as he reviewed the latest batch of messages, we're getting some interesting responses. The Verdani plant people are offering to share their agricultural technology. The Hive Collective wants to discuss a mutual defense pact. And the others? Half are threatening to sterilize our planet. The other half are asking how much it would cost to hire us as mercenaries. Morrison activated the main communication system and prepared to address the entire galaxy. Her message would be broadcast simultaneously to every council world, every military installation, and every government building in known space. This is Admiral Morrison of Earth, speaking for all of humanity, she began, her voice calm and professional. Your fleets are safe and your crews are unharmed. They are, however, our guests until certain conditions are met. The response was immediate and predictable. Across the galaxy, council chambers erupted in chaos. Threats, demands, and promises of retaliation flooded the communication channels. Morrison waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. You seem to have misunderstood our position, she said. Let me clarify, we are not a servitor species. We are not subjects to be conquered. We are humanity, and we have been preparing for this moment since we first learned we were not alone. Behind her, a holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of council space. As Morrison spoke, red dots began appearing throughout the galaxy. At first there were only a few, but soon there were dozens, then hundreds. Those red indicators represent human assets currently positioned within your territories, Morrison explained. Ships, stations, and installations that have been in place for months. Some of you might recognize them as the merchant vessels and scientific expeditions we've been sending throughout your space. The implications hit the council members like a physical blow. If those red dots represented human military assets, then humanity had not just captured one fleet. They had positioned themselves throughout the entire galaxy. Captain Jake Sullivan, now in command of the captured flagship Eternal Dominion, sent his own message to Earth. Admiral, the council crews are asking questions. They want to know how we learned their technology so quickly. Dr. Lisa Park answered from her laboratory on Earth. Tell them it's because we've been studying them since first contact. Every piece of technology they shared with us, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic dinner was a learning opportunity. The truth was even more comprehensive than the council realized. Human scientists had been working around the clock to understand alien technology. Every gift, every trade sample, every cultural artifact had been carefully analyzed and reverse-engineered. But more than that, human agents had been living and working throughout council space for months. They had learned alien languages, studied alien customs, and gained access to alien facilities. What the council saw as primitive curiosity was actually professional intelligence gathering. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Dr. Sam Turner had spent 6 months working alongside alien miners. He had learned their techniques, studied their equipment, and gained their trust. When the activation signal came, he was ready. The humans have been among us all along, Turner transmitted to his Earth handlers. They've been mapping our facilities, studying our technology, and preparing for this moment. We never suspected because we never thought they were capable of such sophistication. Similar reports came from across the galaxy. Human agents revealed themselves on dozens of worlds, not as conquerors but as observers who had been quietly gathering intelligence for months. The Council's greatest shock came when they realized how thoroughly they had been infiltrated. Human merchants had been trading in their markets. Human scientists had been working in their laboratories. Human diplomats had been attending their meetings. All of them had been reporting back to Earth. How many of you are there? Admiral Kethver asked Captain Sullivan during one of their conversations aboard the captured flagship. More than you thought, Sullivan replied. Fewer than you fear. We're not an invasion force, Admiral. We're explorers and traders and scientists who happen to be very good at paying attention. The psychological impact on the Council species was profound. For 1,000 years, they had maintained order through the threat of overwhelming force. Now they discovered that their military superiority had been an illusion based on fighting enemies who played by their rules. Dr. Park transmitted a message to the Council's scientific community explaining humanity's approach to the situation. We studied you because that's what we do. Humans are curious by nature. When we encounter something new, we want to understand it completely. But you use that knowledge to defeat us, came the reply from a Zephyrian scientist. We use that knowledge to survive, Dr. Park corrected. You declared war on us, remember? We simply made sure we were ready for it. The most disturbing revelation for the Council was not humanity's capabilities, but their methods. The humans had not won through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won through patience, careful observation, and thorough preparation. They think like predators, observed Elder Silrith of the Deepers during an emergency session. But they plan like prey animals? They studied every possible threat and prepared for every contingency, because that's what we had to do to survive. On our world, Dr. Park explained in her broadcast to the Council scientific community, Earth taught us that the environment is always changing, and the only way to survive is to be ready for anything. The Council species had evolved unstable worlds where survival strategies could be planned generations in advance. They had become specialists, perfect at specific tasks but unable to adapt quickly to new situations. Humans had evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them in new and creative ways. They had learned to be generalists, adequate at many things but excellent at one crucial skill, adaptation. As the fourth day of the crisis passed, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. The Council could no longer maintain order through the threat of force, because that force had been proven ineffective against an enemy that refused to fight by traditional rules. The humans had demonstrated that they were not just another species, to be classified and controlled. They were something new, something that the galaxy had never encountered before. They were adaptable, unpredictable, and utterly unwilling to accept anyone else's definition of what they could or could not do. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. The standoff lasted exactly 14 days. During that time, the Galactic Council learned more about humanity than they had discovered in the previous year of diplomatic contact. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization, warfare, and survival. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Lisa Park was invited to address the Council's emergency assembly via holographic projection. She stood in her laboratory on Earth, looking out at the representatives of 47 different worlds who were struggling to understand how their perfect order had been shattered so completely. You keep trying to fit us into your categories. Dr. Park began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. Predator or prey, logical or emotional, individual or collective. But we don't fit because we're not just one thing. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their atmospheric pods. The idea of a species that could not be classified was deeply disturbing to minds that had organized the entire galaxy around clear, simple categories. Your worlds were kind to you, Dr. Park continued. Stable climates, predictable seasons, manageable challenges. You evolved elegant solutions to specific problems. You became specialists, perfect at what you do. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's violent history. Images of ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and mass extinctions filled the chamber. Our world was not kind to us. It tried to kill us in every way possible for 4 million years. We survived not by becoming perfect at one thing, but by learning to be good enough at everything. We became generalists because specialists die when the environment changes. Senator Yathara of the Crystal Collective chimed her confusion. But specialization is efficiency. It is the foundation of civilization. It is, Dr. Park agreed, but adaptation is survival. And sometimes survival. Comey's first. While Dr. Park explained human evolution to the Council, Admiral Kate Morrison was engaged in more practical negotiations. The captured Council fleets would be returned, but not without conditions. The terms she proposed would reshape galactic politics forever. First, Morrison stated during a secure communication with the Council leadership, humanity will be granted full membership status with all the rights and privileges that entails. No more observer status, no more classification requirements. Ambassador Vextai of the hegemony bristled at the demand. You are in no position to make demands. We could simply wait for you to return our fleets and then resume hostilities. Morrison's smile was thin but genuine. You could try. But you've seen what we can do when we have months to prepare. How do you think we'll perform when we have years? The threat was not idle. Human agents throughout the galaxy had not revealed all their capabilities. If anything, the capture of the Council fleet had been a demonstration of restraint rather than full strength. The second condition was even more shocking. Any species that wishes to join what we're calling the Human Coalition will be welcome, regardless of their current Council status. This was the bombshell that truly shattered the existing order. Within hours of the announcement, 17 different species had sent secret communications to Earth, expressing interest in joining the coalition. Most were younger civilizations that had been forced into servitor status by the Council, but some were surprising defectors from established powers. The Kethmori, who had been loyal council members for centuries, sent a delegation asking about the terms of membership. Why would you want to leave the council? Admiral Morrison asked the Kethmori ambassador during their private meeting. Because you have shown us something we had forgotten, the insectoid replied, his compound eyes reflecting the light from Earth's sun. You have shown us that there are other ways to survive than by following the rules of those who came before. The negotiations continued for days. The council found themselves in an impossible position. They could not defeat humanity militarily, and they could not afford to let the human coalition grow stronger by accepting new members. General Rick Coleman watched the diplomatic chaos unfold from his office in the Pentagon. They're panicking, he observed to Admiral Morrison during one of their daily briefings. Half of them want to make deals with us. The other half want to pretend this never happened. And the ones who are threatening to destroy Earth? Morrison asked, getting quieter every day. Hard to make threats when your fleet is parked in our backyard. The truth was that the Council's options were limited. They had built their entire system around the assumption that superior force could solve any problem. Now they faced an enemy that had neutralized their force without using any of their own. Captain Jake Sullivan, still commanding the captured flagship, provided regular reports on the mood among the Council crews. They're asking a lot of questions, he told Morrison during one of their conversations, about our technology, our tactics, our intentions, but mostly they're asking about us. What do you mean? They want to understand how we think. They're trying to figure out if we're a threat to the galaxy or just a threat to their way of running it. Dr. Park's cultural analysis teams had been working around the clock to answer that same question from the human perspective. Their conclusion was both simple and profound. We're not trying to conquer the galaxy, Dr. Park explained during a broadcast to all Council worlds. We're trying to survive in it. There's a difference. The difference was crucial. Traditional conquerors sought to impose their will on others. Humans sought to create space for themselves and anyone else who wanted to join them. The breakthrough came on the 12th day of negotiations. The Council's military leaders, led by Admiral Kethver, sent a private message to their political counterparts. The humans are not like any enemy we have faced, Kethver reported from his position aboard the captured flagship. They study everything, learn from everyone, and adapt to any situation. If we continue to oppose them, they will only become stronger. The final Council vote was closer than anyone expected. The resolution passed by a margin of only 3 votes. But it passed. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The human coalition would be recognized as a legitimate political entity. And the existing order would be changed forever. Admiral Morrison stood in the same Pentagon briefing room where she had watched the war declaration 2 weeks earlier. This time she was watching the vote that would make humanity an equal partner. In galactic civilization, think they'll honor the agreement? General Coleman asked. They'll try, Morrison replied. But the real question is what happens next. We've shown them that their way isn't the only way. Some of them will adapt, others will resist. It's going to be interesting. The captured Council fleets were returned over the following week. Each ship was given back exactly as it had been taken, with full crews and no permanent damage. The only change was that each vessel now carried a small gift from humanity, a simple communication device that would allow direct contact with Earth. Consider it a hotline, Captain Sullivan explained to Admiral Kethver as the alien commander prepared to leave the captured flagship. If you ever need to talk, we're here. 6 months later, Ambassador Kate Morrison stood in the same council chambers where war had been declared. The atmospheric pods had been reconfigured to accommodate new member species, and the agenda included items that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The motion to establish joint exploration fleets has been approved, announced the Council's new speaker, a human diplomat named Director Alan Foster. Additionally, the proposal for shared technology initiatives has passed by a wide margin. The changes went deeper than just policy. The Council itself had been transformed from a rigid hierarchy into something more flexible and inclusive. Species that had been forced into servitor status for centuries were now full members with voting rights. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Several of the older council races had withdrawn from active participation, maintaining their membership, but refusing to engage with the new system. Others had embraced the transformation. Eager to explore new possibilities, the galaxy was learning to adapt. Just as humanity had learned to adapt on Earth, it was not always easy, and it was not always comfortable, but it was necessary. Dr. Park published her final report on the crisis 1 year after the war declaration. Her conclusion was simple. When the Galactic Council declared war on humanity, they expected to enforce their version of order. Instead, they discovered that order can take many forms and that the strongest systems are those that can change. When they need to, the humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply shown it that conquest was not the only path to survival. In a universe full of wonders and dangers, adaptation was more valuable than domination. The age of rigid classifications was over. The age of infinite possibilities had begun.